So today we'll be unpacking the best and worst performance from this particular region. And another thing that we'll be looking at is in terms of the best performers, which will be Botswana for this week, what has been driving sentiment in that particular region. Then we look at the laggards in that region, and that has been Zimbabwe. So the likes of Econet and Delta have definitely been a pressure point for that particular market. But to help me make sense of all of this, I'm now joined by Thabo Ncalo. He is a portfolio manager at Stanlib, and he joins us here today. Thabo, thank you so much. So first, let's start off with the first point, best and worst performing bourses for the week. Tell us what the movements have been like in the southern parts of Africa.
Sure, good afternoon to me. Sure. I mean, it's been fascinating looking at markets this week. It's just been a red week all throughout the southern African region, all except Botswana. You know, Botswana was the only market that was almost flat, but a little bit up, just under 1%. All the other markets across the region, you look at Namibia, you look at Zimbabwe, you look at even South Africa, we're all in the red this week as a result, I think, of what we saw happening in China and across global markets in general. So
we definitely, the Southern African markets were not shielded at all. We definitely reacted to the global events that took place.
Correct. And I think we also saw our currencies on the back of that also weakening quite a bit. So it was a double whammy. You know, you saw the markets falling quite a bit, and you saw the currencies getting hit quite badly as well. As you know, markets like Namibia, like Swaziland, of course, have their currencies pegged to the South African rand. So any weakness in the rand, of course, affects all these markets. So the only green movements we saw this week in Africa was across East Africa. And only, as we say, in Southern Africa, it was only Botswana that was up marginally.
So let's talk about Botswana there. What drove the positive sentiment there?
It's mainly been, large movements from stocks such as Choppies. Choppies, which also, dual listed in South Africa at the end of May. That stock has done extremely well, both in Botswana and in South Africa. So you saw Choppies this week leading the market. I think it was down, it was up just a little under 5%, and that stock continues to hit new highs. But just mainly on the back of the announcements they've made that they're looking to, acquire new supermarket chains across East Africa, across Kenya, and across Tanzania. So I think some of this positive news and the fact that we're waiting for results from Choppies has still continued to sort of, push that market higher and higher over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, are you convinced that this is sustainable? I mean, a 5% move, is this just for this week, or is that a continuous movement that you have been seeing for that particular counter? You know,
we've seen Choppies just, increasing since sort of the end of April, and that's been sustained, since then, And it's mainly on the back of, as I mentioned, the amount of space growth they're likely to get as they acquire new, new supermarkets, new markets. So they're currently sitting at about 125 stores between, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Botswana, and now they're looking to get into Tanzania. They've bought 10 new stores in Kenya. So I think all of these, extra space growth that's coming through is helping to give the stock a little bit of support. And I think the market is pricing some of these, growth prospects that are coming through into the stock.
You mentioned Zimbabwe there. We're going to go to that in just a few moments. But just a final point on Choppies. Them entering the East African market. We spoke to the chief executive a few months ago when they listed on the JSE. And he's keeping his cards very close to his chest. In terms of them being able to penetrate those markets effectively, what's the temperature on the ground that you are hearing from your peers?
Well, look, I mean, they seem to have done a good job in South Africa. If you look at what they've done, just expanding out of Botswana, going into South Africa, and then into Zimbabwe. So, I mean, I think the track record of the players, of Choppies, has sort of, led the market to believe that they can execute in various markets across Southern Africa. So, Kenya is a natural fit. They've gone in and acquired an existing chain of supermarkets of 10 stores, and they're looking to, to expand even further into Tanzania. So, from that perspective, most of the acquisitions haven't necessarily been greenfield. They've been going out there acquiring an existing chain and expanding from there. So, and they've done a pretty good job so far, and I think they haven't as yet given the market any reason to doubt them or to doubt the fact that they won't be able to execute as well in East Africa.
Well, Zimbabwe, that is one that has been a laggard for this week. So 2 stocks sticking out for you, Econet and Delta.
Sure. I mean, Zimbabwe has unfortunately been, one of the worst performing markets in Africa this year, and this week is no exception, and that's as a result of some of economically the country is going through quite a lot of trouble. We saw, even the growth rate being cut to the lowest level, I think cut down by the Ministry of Finance a couple of weeks ago to about 1.5%, which is the lowest since the economy dollarized. And I think all of these issues, and of course the weaker rand is also affecting the economy, where, now the economy finds it easier to import goods from South Africa as a result of the weaker rand, in terms of what they consume. And that, of course, tends to affect local producers, and that tends to affect, local manufacturing base. And as you correctly said, the market has continued to get hit. Largely, the larger names like Econet, like Delta, have been the ones that have been most affected, and they've been, dramatically, beat down, as it were, I think, over the last couple of weeks.
And they're playing in different sectors. But what's interesting is you mentioned Choppies in Zimbabwe. Can they make it work, given the fact that all the constraints and the negativity around this particular investment opportunity, or not, that is Zimbabwe?
Most of the stores they acquired in Zimbabwe are largely, to the southwest, closer to Bulawayo, and obviously closer to the border with Botswana. And some of that, the case that the Choppies has made is that they're easily able to export they'll move their goods from Botswana or from South Africa into their stores in South Africa. Sorry, in Zimbabwe. So I think that bodes quite well for them, because whenever you have a slowdown in Zimbabwe and you have the Zimbabwean economy importing as much as they can from either Botswana or South Africa, they tend to benefit quite well, because they can just move their stores, presumably from their their distribution centers in those countries into Zimbabwe. So it should bode quite well for them, I think, as the situation goes on.
So it really is about positioning. Thabo, thank you so much. Thanks so much to Thabo Ncalo. He's a portfolio manager at Stanlib.